What's up? Hello, my name is Liz and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I believe my neighbors are doing their yard work right now, but the filming must go on, needs must as you will. And so if you hear yard work noises, life, okay? We're just gonna keep going. But today I'm going to do my May wrap-up, and how I kind of do this on this channel, if you are new, I have been doing not my May wrap-up, did I just say my May wrap-up? I meant my April wrap-up. Wow. But as I do on this channel, I do a mid-month update and I talk about a lot of the books that I've read. Those books will not be talked about on this video. It's going to be just the books that I've read the second half of the month. So if you're curious about my first half of the month, I will link that video above and below. And I just do stats and then the second half of the month in this video. So, you know, trying to keep it a little shorter instead of like a 40-minute video for your pleasure and really my pleasure, because I don't want to edit a 40-minute video really. But in saying that, let's just move on and get to the nitty-gritty of this video. So for the month of April, I'm gonna mess up that quite a few times probably. I read 21 books. In this video in particular though, I'm only going to talk about eight books. So a majority of those books I read in the first half of April, which is perfectly fine. Now looking at some of my stats, I read a majority of ebooks this month, which are more than likely from the library, and this month in particular, all of them were from the library, which I am perfectly okay with. That means I'm supporting my local library and I'm saving a ton of money. Gotta love that. I read one book on audio, and I believe I talked about that in the first part of the month. Yes, I did. So we're good. That was Sadie. And then I read a couple of physical books, not as much as I wanted to, but again, such is life. And then I ended up sneaking in one graphic novel at the end of the month, actually the very last day of the month. Genre-wise, it was a lot better than last month, I'll say that. I read a lot more than just fantasy. But it's really just my typical genres. I mean, I have my mystery, my horror, my romance, which I've been trying to get into, and then a couple of more nonfictions, which I did not have last month, I believe. And then, of course, thriller. So at least a little bit more dispersed this month, which I'm pretty happy about, to say the least. Now, page length, not surprising per se, but a little bit, because I thought I read a little bit more diverse page lengths, but clearly looking at the graph over here, I read a majority of 300 to 399 books. But then there was Needful Things, which was in the 800 page length, and then of course The House of Leaves in the 700 page length. So a couple of big books this month, and I'm not angry at it. I just thought it was a bit more diverse. That's all. Not angry at it, just surprised. And then last but not least, my star rankings. And again, not surprised. I've been around here for star rankings for the past couple of months. I didn't have another 5-star book. So I'm at 1 5-star book this year. I did have a 2.5-star book, and that's Just Life. And then I think I had one 4.5-star book, and we'll talk about that actually, because that was the second half of the month. And kind of stayed within the 3 to 4-star range, which is a good month. That means I didn't dislike any books, but they weren't like the loves of my life, you know? So a decent month. But in saying that, let us go on to what I read. So the second part of the month, I was able to finish a trilogy I'd started last month, and I read The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. And this is part of the Bear and the Nightingale series. I forget what the series is actually called, but this was the third book and final book in that series. And I have to admit, I really, really enjoyed the whole series. I thought it was very wonderfully done. I thought that the fantasy was beautiful. I thought the historical context, although I'm not familiar with Russian history as I probably should be, but I thought it was very wonderfully done. At its base, though, I thought this series was more, at least leaning towards feminist ideals and leaning more towards family issues, which I'm not mad about at all. But there were some things that were ultimately lacking if that were the case. But that didn't stop me from enjoying the series. I'm a big fan of fantasy, and this was a beautiful YA fantasy, to say the least. I think at the end, I gave this book a 3.5 star, and I would highly recommend the series just because it's something... It's just something really happy. Well, I shouldn't say happy, actually. Fantastical? It's a fantasy that's fantastical. What can I say? Yeesh. I really need to work on my word choice there. But to say the least, it was a fun read. I enjoyed the series. Don't know if I'd pick it up again anytime soon, but I would recommend it to others who enjoy fantasy or YA fantasy. So there you go. And then the next book I read this month was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is a book that was really highly loved in BookTube last year, maybe a little bit before last year. But I read, I think it was Sally Thorne's second book before I read this one, and I was not a fan. Both of them are kind of haters to lovers tropes. And reading the reviews, this book is a lot more loved than the other book that I read. But The Hating Game is definitely haters to lovers. They're both in the publishing industry, the two main characters. And I thought it was cute. I thought it was a good romance book. I don't know. It just wasn't necessarily for me. What did I end up? Oh, I did end up giving it a 3.5. I would highly suggest it over her other book and some of the other romances I've been reading. So there is that. So, a cute romance. It's another cute romance. There you go. And then I have my 4.5 star read of this month. I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune this month as a buddy read with Sunny Luca. And I picked it up because it was part of my 5-star prediction series that's clearly been taking me a long time to get through. Just going to point that out. Again, such is life. But this book, I was kind of apprehensive because everyone is saying that it's like a warm hug. Everyone on BookTube saying it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. And I was apprehensive because I wanted it to be all of those things, but there's no way there's no bad reviews out there, right? However, I will say all of what you're hearing is true. It's okay to be skeptical. Be skeptical. Be skeptical and then pick up this book and be absolutely in love with it like I am. I won't say so far as to say it's my favorite book of all time. it was not a 5-star read for me. It was a 4.5. It's like that gut feeling, it's not your favorite book ever, but it's really highly rated, right? That's this book for me. I would say too, this book really hit home for me because it's about magical kids in orphanages being discriminated against, right? And really, as someone who works with students of all races, size, backgrounds, you work with kids. You're gonna work with kids who are different. A lot of what this book is saying hit home hard for me. And I did shed a couple of tears. And I laughed. I smiled. I frowned. This is a really, really cute book. And if you have not picked it up yet, I would pick it up. Point blank. Do it. All right. The next book I read this month was my first nonfiction book of this month. It's called The Cooking Gene by Michael W. Twitty. I hope I'm saying that right. It kind of took me by surprise. I kind of knew what it was about, but at the same time, I really didn't. It goes through the history of Southern cooking and the origins of a lot of recipes and the history of African Americans in the United States and why cooking really means a lot to certain people and why it means a lot. And I really, really enjoyed the history and how he incorporates recipes throughout the book. And I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, so that really made me happy. I ended up giving it a 3, which I have to say doesn't seem high, but considering it was a book that I kind of picked up because there wasn't a hold on the library, was pretty high for me. So I would highly suggest it if you really enjoy books about cooking and the history of cooking, and just, dive right into this one. Ooh. And then I have The House of Leaves, which I did a whole vlog about. I'll link it above and below. It's non-spoilery because I don't like to be spoiled myself, so I don't want to spoil it for others. But let me tell you, it was a ride, to say the least. I've noticed that this book is kind of seeing a resurgence on BookTube, which I don't know why. I picked it up because my brother kind of dared me, point blank. I enjoyed my read. I'm really glad I did it. Will I pick this book up again anytime soon? More than likely not. I'm gonna stay away from this guy for a while. But I'm glad I've had this experience first, and then maybe in a couple of years when I'm feeling adventurous again, I'll probably pick it up. But yeah, this book was a ride. This book was very much something. I ended up giving it a 4-star because it was really good. I really did enjoy it. But I'm just gonna set it down and not look at it for years. And then after House of Leaves, I really needed something light, fluffy, airy to help me get out of the mindset House of Leaves put me in. So I ended up picking up, something's weird with that grammar, but I picked up My Life in France by Julia Child, and that's her autobiography, sort of autobiography. I know she died while this was being written, but I picked up that book and it was absolutely phenomenal. Is so cute and fluffy and just all around like everything you would imagine Julia Child's book to be. I have to admit, never read one of her cookbooks. They kind of scare me if I'm going to be honest, but this book is just her history, how she got into cooking, how, like, where she traveled, kind of that history. And it's scattered with all of the pictures her husband took. So not only do you get her history in her own words, you get all of these visual images that very much seem incredibly intimate. And it was just a breath of fresh air and absolutely adorable. I loved it, and it's hands down a beautiful book. I gave it a 3.5 because it wasn't like groundbreaking or anything. It was just a really cute book. It's something that I would definitely pick up again, and I might actually see if I can find it at a good used bookstore to add to my collection so I can pick it up again willingly. But I do highly suggest it if you're just looking for a cute nonfiction book to pick up and you're looking for a nice autobiography maybe. So Julia Child right there. And then once again, I was still kind of in a little something because of House of Leaves. And so I picked up Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. And I have read Neil Gaiman before. I think I've only read Coraline and the Graveyard books, so more of his young middle grade stuff. And I've never read Terry Pratchett before. So saying that, if you have a recommendation, please leave that in the comments below. But Good Omens was really fun. I love dry humor so much, and that is definitely what this book was. I didn't know I would go into it liking it as much as I did. I kind of watched Good Omens on Amazon, I think it's on, but it's a TV show now, adapted, right? But it was like on in the background while I was working this past year. Yay, teaching. And I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention to it, and now that I've read the book, I'm very curious to see the show again, to see how true the show kept to the book. But I really did enjoy it, and I ended up giving it a 3.5 star. But I'm very curious to go back to revisit some of Neil Gaiman's work and to visit Terry Pratchett's work, because if that's what they're all about in their adult stuff, I want more. And then the very last book I read this month is Delicates, which is the sequel to Sheets. And this is a beautiful, beautiful graphic novel. I read it Sheets I read last year, and it has beautiful, beautiful pictures and drawings in it. And honestly, this story, it's so good. Sheets was amazing. It talked about grief and acceptance of one's passing, because, you know, ghosts. And this one takes it even a step further, and you're talking about some mental illnesses, you're talking about friendships and just growing up. And it's a good book. It is beautiful. I am so excited to introduce these books to my classroom. And I want more from this author, point blank. I'm so glad she wrote a sequel, and I'm hoping she'll write it in a trilogy and really just a long series, because she clearly has a talent for writing beautiful graphic novels that deal with some really deep stuff in a very mature way. So point blank, if you have not picked up Sheets or Delicates, I think you should, A, and B, if you have a young person in your life and you think they should pick these up, I think they should pick these up, if that made any sense. Pick these up. Pick them up. Oh, and I gave this book a 4 star. So there you go. All right. And that is my April wrap up. I got the month right this time. So it was a pretty great month of reading again. I hope you had a wonderful month too. And if you liked this video, please give me that thumbs up. And like I said, if you have a Terry Pratchett book that you want to recommend, please leave that in the comments below. Or even if you just had a great book that you read this past month, leave that in the comments below too. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.